Okay, so after he's dragged me off to the pinnacles on New Year's Eve, it should not have surprised me any in year 10 of our marriage when he announced that we were going to spend spring break on Isla Cedros, a small little island off the coast of Ensenada, Mexico, known only really to local marine biologists as a great destination to view sea life. We were going to spend the week scuba diving and snorkeling off the coast of this little tiny island out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Now, to some of you, that may sound like a dream vacation. But to me, it sounded just a little terrifying. But that's what we were going to do. So Guy had talked to the local marine biologist in Ensenada, who had told him that we needed to take the one and only daily flight from Ensenada to Isla Cedros. And when we got there, there would be a man named Pancho who would be waiting for us with a car. And he would take us to a motel and set us up with a boat driver. Sounded easy enough. And so we drove the 8 hours from Modesto, where we lived, down to Ensenada. And when we got there, we walked into the airport, and the man at the desk says, "Oh, Cedros." Yeah, no. That plane's broken. No flights to Cedros indefinitely. Oh. Well, there we were with our bags packed and a week stretching out in front of us and nowhere to go. And then all of a sudden we hear this man rushing up from behind us. No, wait, I take you, I have plane, I take you $50, I take, right now. We turn around and here's this man and I see the plane, and it's a tiny plane. Maybe 4 seats, and I have never been on a plane that small. I'm not sure I want to go on that plane with a total stranger out over the Pacific Ocean. But before I can say anything, Guy says, "Okay, let's go." And so the pilot asked us how much we weighed, and then he placed us in the plane accordingly. And when he shut the door, I am looking at the wall of this plane, and I'm like, what is this made of? Tin foil? It was so thin. And then when he started the engines, all I could think of was a Singer sewing machine. It sounded so rinky-dink. So we take off. My stomach is in my throat, because any breath of air sent us staggering across the sky. Finally, I saw this little landmass out there in the water, and as we get closer, I saw that it had a ring of trees, cedar trees, thus the name Cedros. And then, as we got closer still, on the eastern coast, I could see a few little buildings, maybe a town, and then down to the south, there was this narrow ribbon that had been carved out of this rugged landscape. And when the wing of the plane dipped down toward it, I realized that's our landing strip. So we come taxiing in, and as soon as we stop, people come from everywhere, just out of the air. They're just pouring all over just screaming, yelling, whooping and hollering. They are so excited to see someone arriving. So the pilot starts offloading boxes and bags, and Guy and I are unfurling our tall bodies out of this cramped plane. And when we look up, this party atmosphere freezes. They're all staring at us. I saw kids scamper behind their parents' legs and peek at them. And I heard one of them say, "Gringos." Not a big tourist destination, I'm thinking. I was pretty sure most of those kids had never seen white people before. So the crowd disperses. The pilot takes off back to the mainland, leaving Guy and I in this cloud of exhaust fumes. And when all of that cleared, we realize we are standing in the middle of nowhere. There is no airport building, let alone a string of taxis waiting to take us to our destination. It's just Guy and me and our bags standing in this desolate place. And then we looked over and saw one lone man standing with his car. Poncho. We rushed over. It's 12. Plane's an hour late. The sun is directly overhead now, so our swath of shade is even narrower than it was before. And it is hot. Guy is reading his Birds of North America book, and I am doing a crossword puzzle. 10 across, a whale in Mexico. 7 letters, starts with B. Oh, clever. Ballena. Oh God. I remember exactly where I was when I first learned that word. 12 of us boarded a bus in Glendale, California, heading down to Baja for a Spanish class. It was the wee hours of one summer morning in 1989. Glendale College owned a station house down in Bahia de Los Angeles, Bay of the Angels, and they offered classes there all summer long. And since I was a bilingual teacher, it was part of my contract that I would take a Spanish class every year to keep my skills up. And I thought it would be really fun to take my Spanish class in Mexico this year. I love Mexico. I mean, my parents and I used to go there all the time. We would stay in these beautiful hotels on the glistening beaches of Mazatlan, La Paz, Cabo San Lucas. Ooh, it was great. So we rode the bus down to Bahia, which was on the Sea of Cortez side of the peninsula. And when they opened the doors of the bus, a blast furnace hit us in the face. It was so hot and humid, and I thought, oh dear Lord, what have I done? So we get off the bus, check out the station house, and it's rustic, a far cry from the Mazatlan Marriott, I would say, but it was all right. And then I found out that we were going to be spending every night on canvas cots, out under the stars on the beach. And I thought, that sounded so cool. And then I found out there was a marine biologist on staff who was going to be taking us out on the boats every day to teach us about the area. Boats? Well, this city girl hadn't spent a lot of time on boats, but I was game. And then I found out that we were going to be snorkeling every day. And that was when my anxiety level rose a little bit, because I'd never actually snorkeled before, and it sounded a little bit scary. And then I found out that was going to start that night. The marine biologist says, I'm going to take you out on a bioluminescent swim. What now? Oh, you'll see. And so that night, when the sun went down and it got good and dark, we all emerged from the station house clad only in our bathing suits, and we headed out towards the inky black water. The only light out there was from the millions and millions of stars. What the hell? There were stars upon stars upon stars. There were no spaces between the stars. What else had I been missing out on growing up in Los Angeles all these years? It was unbelievable. So we get onto the boat, And we take off, and soon enough I see these shimmering torpedoes that are cruising by the boat. And I recognized right away they were dolphins, but what was making them glow like that? And then I saw that any of the little ripples that the boat was making were exploding into itty-bitty stars. And I thought, this is bioluminescence. He stopped the boat. Okay, jump in. Here? Now? With untold numbers of sea creatures lurking beneath the surface? But people were jumping in, and I could see why I had to. So I took a deep breath, and I made the leap. I splashed into the water, and I was Tinkerbell. Oh my God! My entire body was covered in golden bubbles. And when I moved my arms through the water, trails of fairy dust were left behind. This was the most magical thing I had ever seen in my life. We laughed. Some of us cried. And I knew I had been fundamentally changed. The 2 weeks of that class were incredible. Oh, and my Spanish got a lot better too. So when Guy and I saw Pancho standing by the car, I knew that I would be doing most of the talking. Pancho? No. ¿Conoce usted Pancho? ¿Cuál Pancho? Which Pancho? Pancho iba a llevarnos a un motel y arreglarnos con un conductor de lancha para llevarnos en el barco todos los días. The guy throws his head back with this great toothless smile and he laughs and he says, "No hay moteles aquí." Guy was getting a little impatient. He said, "Well, what did he say?" "There are no motels here." "What? Well, is this Pancho?" "No, this isn't Pancho. He doesn't know which Pancho, and there are no motels here." "Well, did you say it right?" "I said it right, Guy. There are no motels." "Oh, for God's sakes." Just then the driver says, "Hay un cuarto? There's a room that we could stay in? Could you take us there? See? Okay, so we are going to go with this guy." "What do you mean?" "Well, he says there's a room that we can stay in and he's going to take us. So come on, let's go." We got in the car. The car. It was a 1965 Chevy Impala. Wow. A little worse for wear. The back tires were completely bald. There were no seat belts and no suspension, as it turned out. The guy punches it as soon as we get in, and the back tires just spin out all this dirt and rocks everywhere. And then we are off like a shot down the dirt road. We are going so fast that we're hitting just the tops of the corrugation in the dirt road. And then when we hit the curves, the back end is fishtailing back and forth. Guy and I are free fall in the back seat, trying not to slam into each other. We finally get to the house, and he stops the car. We get out, and the driver says, "Es posible que ustedes pueden encontrar Pancho en la fábrica, porque muchos hombres trabajan allí. Buena suerte." Guy again. What did he say this time? He said we might be able to find Pancho at the factory because a lot of men work there. We go to the house. The house was a stucco house, and in its heyday, it had been aqua blue. But it was faded and cracked, and there was no landscaping, just dirt all the way up to the front door. So we walked up and we saw that the door was ajar. We stepped right into the living room. walls were bare studs. The floor was a patchwork of plywood. And I'm pretty sure that the couch in the back corner was the source of the cat pee smell that was emanating. And just then, this lovely woman comes in from the back of the house. "Oh," she says, a little startled to see two tall strangers standing in her living room. Guy says, "Okay, tell her we need a room." "No, I'll tell her." "Necesito 4 para el semen." And she looks at him, a combination of shock and amusement, because he had just said, "I need 4 for semen." I said, "Oh, no. Necesitamos 1/4 para la semana." "Oh, sí. She said we could have a room within a couple of hours. And I told her we needed to go to town, and she pointed the way, and so we walked. The poverty was palpable. The dwellings were a combination of corrugated metal and cardboard. And there was this great volleying of dogs barking back and forth, as if telegraphing the news that gringos were in town. And pretty sure the word was out, because every little place we walked by, people were peering out to look at us. We saw this gully running down the middle of the road, and as we got closer, the smell confirmed that it was raw sewage. Their sewer system just running out to the open ocean. We found town with no problem, and we found the factory. We sat down on a little bench to wait. And it wasn't too much longer before the doors pushed open, and out poured a couple dozen men. And we wondered aloud how in the world we were going to find this man. But a couple of the friendlier ones came over smiling, and so I said, "Conocen ustedes Pancho?" And the taller one said, "Oh, hay 20 panchos aquí." There are 20 panchos here. And it was then that we knew we were toast. We'd been on the island less than 2 hours, and we knew we had to get off. But how? So we decided to just walk back to the only restaurant we'd seen to hatch a plan. We walked in. Oh yeah. It smelled like Burger King at 10:30 at night. You know that overused oil smell? We sat down at a little table, and this waitress came up with a plate of food for each of us, with refried beans and fried tacos, the only thing they served. And I looked at Guy, and it looked as if he was going to burst into tears. You see, my husband was what I like to call a no-fatitarian. He would not allow any fat to cross his lips, or any salt for that matter. When I married him, I married into an instant family. He had a 10-year-old son, 12-year-old daughter, and our courtship had been sort of quick. A little too quick, it could be argued. But I hadn't spent enough time with the three of them to really understand the ins and outs of their day-to-day life. But what I quickly learned was that Guy did all the cooking. And their diet consisted of a lot of broccoli and rice and cardboard. It was just very bland. The kids had it easier than I did, because they were only with us half the time. And so they could escape to their mother's house for real food. But for me, I had just arrived in Modesto from Los Angeles. Angeles, the home of Bob's Big Boy, of In-N-Out, of Tommy Burgers. This was going to be a tough transition for me. So Guy insisted that whenever the kids were with us, that he would do all of the cooking. I was pretty sure he didn't trust me to make appropriate food for them. I can't imagine why. But anyway, so it was a Sunday, and it was getting to be lunchtime, and he was working on a project, and he says, you know, I don't really want to stop working on this, so how about if we just skip lunch today, and I'll make an early dinner. Well, I was kind of hungry, and I thought the kids might be too. I said, okay, well, you know, I need to run an errand. I have to go buy some candles. Do you kids want to come with me? Now, I don't know if they saw the devilish gleam in my eye, but they readily agreed to come. And so we all piled into the car, and as soon as everyone was settled, I reeled around and I said, okay, look, we are not going for candles. We're going to Carl's Jr. And a scream of delight came out of the back seat. There were double bacon cheeseburgers. There were French fries. There were Dr. Peppers. We savored every greasy, salty bite of that food. And when we were done, we checked each other over for stray salt, bits of bun. And then we pinky swore that we would never speak of this meal. Oh, I bought the candles, decoys. Yeah. I am no fool. And when we got home, Guy was waiting for us at the door. And he said, well, I decided to make lunch after all. We did not look at each other. We all knew what we had to do. And so we walked stoically through the living room, into the kitchen, where the table was mounded with tuna sandwiches and carrot sticks and celery sticks. And we ate. It was a quiet meal. We knew if we looked at each other or talked to each other, we would burst out laughing. And so with our bellies stuffed full of junk food, we ate every bite of that lunch. I think I gained some respect with the kids that day. And judge me if you will, but that was not our last trip for candles. So when Guy and I were in the restaurant with our plate of refried beans and tacos, I of course ate